There you go.
Nice.
Woo!
Oh,
Nice.
so this.
Wish you were here.
Yeah.
It was what?
Was that wish you were here?
No, I was just fiddling
Or
around.
just okay?
Eric's got his tea on.
Yeah.
I know. I was waiting at the very end. I thought you were going to stop and go. Dun, 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 dun.
No, that's what you do, Rob. You're the singer.
Yeah.
So if I can convince him, my son's at the University of Illinois studying music, and of course I'm his dad. I think he's a fantastic guitarist, but he's played Summerfest, he's played Spain and Portugal. That guitar is his. He's been trying to get me to learn. I am not good at all, but someday maybe I can convince him to come on and do a riff.
Oh, that would be so awesome, because I've seen some of his videos on Instagram that you posted, and I'm like, he's really, really good. Not just good. He's
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. You laugh at this. I've been telling him his whole life to get a degree in science, specifically computer science, and so he applied to Purdue and all these schools and got into many of them. And then he secretly applied for music at Illinois, and I said, "Oh my gosh, go do that. Go do that instead."
That's what he wants.
That.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, so much. Yeah, and I feel like I hammered my kids all through high school. Write code. Go be a developer. You know, and I failed miserably.
Yeah, me too.
And now they make fun of me. They'll come up like, "Hey, Dad, I heard our plan B should be to be a coder."
Well, I took a different approach. I gave up when she was 12, and actually, like 6 months ago, she came back. She said, "I have a boring job. I'm going to stop and learn programming." So
nice.
I don't know if it's going to hold long. She's learning Python now, and she's doing this hardware program online. So I don't know.
My son just followed in his dad's footsteps. He just completed his private pilot license,
Awesome.
helicopter, and now he's going to start working on his commercial. But he's going to get a degree too. So he's throwing around aerospace, engineering. He's throwing around agribusiness. He's all over the place. So I'm like, I don't really care. Like, just go do what you want. Do what you love.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter just dropped her band just dropped a new song on Spotify today. So if you go check it out,
you'll have to share the link with us in the chat.
I will share the link. The band's called Birdhouse, but it turns out there's a lot of bands called Birdhouse.
Yeah.
Who knew?
But I will share the link. Yeah, it's a good one.
My son did the same, and his band's called Mannequin, and there's a lot of mannequins as well. So,
what are you going to do?
Hard to find.
So I think we should talk about NC State, actually. What is going on with that?
Yes, yes.
Oh my God.
Run.
I am living my best life, man. It is a moment of I was very young last time this happened, and now it's finally happened 40 years later. So I got to go this weekend in Texas. It was awesome, man.
And that's kind of what's in my head too when I think of NC State, is when they beat Houston. And he's running around trying to hug somebody at the end. Remember that?
Yeah. No, I hugged a lot of strangers in Dallas last weekend. Yeah.
But if you think about that game, it was the most unlikely win, and it shows the power of coaching, because NC State was playing arguably an NBA team with Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, run and gun fast and everything.
Yeah.
But it was coaching and forcing them to slow down, and just screwed up their game and screwed up everything, because on some level it's like, they should have beat you by 30 points, but you out coached them, and a lot of people don't get that, the power of real coaching and strategy and stuff like that. When you think you have overwhelming talent on the other team, it's never a lost cause.
No,
sometimes you change the rules.
Sometimes you have to change the rules. Absolutely.
And then look at what Jim Valvano became after that. What an inspirational person.
Absolutely. Hugely inspirational person. Oh my God. Yeah. Jimmy B, man.
Jimmy B. I was blessed to see him speak at NC State back in, I think it was 91. It was his first trip back. One of my buddies I started IBM with was there in 83. He invited me to the game, and Valvano gave this speech, and it was insane, and I was fortunate to have been there. So, Aaron, if you guys beat us, I'm not going to be horribly crushed. I will be pretty crushed, but at least one of the good guys.
It's been a little while for both of us. Yeah.
Of course, I watched Houston lose to Duke, and it was really a talent thing. Their star player, Michael Jordan, was not in the game, and so
that's tough.
That was tough. Rob, did you watch the Aggie game where it went into overtime?
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was a nail biter. I was like,
yeah.
My anxiety after that game, I could not go to sleep. I was just like, I'm not going to sleep tonight. It's bad.
But without Shed, Houston was a good team, but they weren't a great team anymore, Yep. And it's like if we went back in time thinking like North Carolina, if all of a sudden they didn't have Michael Jordan on the team when they were winning, how would that have changed things for them going in Final Four, So obviously don't listen to me because I just made a case for coaching over talent. And then I just made a case of talent over coaching.
You can't be wrong. You can't be wrong. It's good. Yeah. Well done.
Now sometimes the talent's so overwhelming, it doesn't matter. Like if you have MJ or somebody on your team. Yeah. Oh, man.
Sometimes the talent is just in another country and you pay them really low wages to make things happen.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Wembanyama at the Spurs, we've been having a rough go at it for a while, so we're finally starting to win some.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
There you go.
That guy's wingspan is like from a 777.
He does this. He just puts his hand up and blocks, and I'm just like, he's not even jumping. He's just like, bam.
Yeah.
I always feel bad for the San Antonio Spurs. They're the most underrated, successful NBA team in history.
Coach Pop is.
If you ask the average person about the success story of San Antonio or how many wins they had, they're like, who? They've never been. What are you talking about?
Those Tim Duncan years, they were pretty awesome.
Robinson, Duncan.
How many did they win, Stephanie? Have they won 4, 3 championships?
I think they have 4 or 5 rings.
Yeah, but it's like nobody knows it.
Yeah.
Because they weren't the Bulls or whatever. You know what I mean?
They won a championship the night my husband asked me to marry him. So we're like in San Antonio. We walk out into this beautiful hotel porch, and then he gets on his knee, and then we go back in and finish the game.
Everyone was cheering for you. It was all for you.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to get engaged.
And
it was too much. It was way too much fun. So
he's thinking, "Wow, I scored. This is my kind of girl."
He likes sports.
Sports fans, and you get all of Stephanie. That's a pretty good package, if you ask me.
That's pretty cool.
Damn right.
That's pretty cool. All right, somebody please say something about technology.
Oh, technology. What happened? Well, we had to suffer through all this April Fool's baloney. I was saying, in this age of disinformation, April Fool's is not as much fun anymore because...
Pete, I got to the point on April 1st, I was like, I don't know if I want to read anything because I'm like, I don't know what's real out there. It
feels like every day is April Fool's
every day.
Days, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Every day.
It's funny. I read one and started buying into it. I'm like, oh, what day is this? I'm like, oh my gosh. I forget which one it was, but they had this commercial with the scientist. I think you guys commented on it, The Edge scientist guy.
I missed that one.
Oh, it's good. It's a company starts with a T.
Is it Twin Thread?
Yes.
Is the new version of
Tulip. It was Tulip.
Tulip with the encabulator.
Tulip, yeah.
Yeah.
They did a fantastic video, and I watched it, and I was about to make a serious comment. I go, wait a minute. I go,
yeah.
The scary part is that could have been, I think I made a comment. I said, that could have been a real video from Corporate Names Redacted.
Well, I think we should post it with that once we post the episode, because here's a Rob Tiffany prediction. If you listen to the language used in the video and the words and the order of the words, how they're utilized against, from technology to outcomes, I bet you that they are on a corporate pitch deck last week already.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
there's probably Chat GPT generated. There was a story about NVIDIA buying the Xbox brand that I know got a lot of traction.
Here, I'll put the link. I found the post from Tulip. It's good.
It always has enough truth to it to be like,
like maybe. Yeah.
It was really
Anyway.
good. But it's one of those, when it's like a lot of words were said, but nothing was said. It's like, okay, words, but like what does it
yeah,
mean?
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of words.
Like you tune out of that conference call for like a half hour, and then you tune in. You realize you didn't miss anything.
We're still here.
Wasn't there just like a whole meme about that during COVID, where you just kind of checked out, and at the very end you go, "Thanks, everyone. All right,
That's right. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks. Great. Love you. Miss you."
What else?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do a little spiel. Rob and I have been on a little journey here with our Windows Phone WTF series we're building, this 9-episode thing. We had an interview with Joe Belfiore last Friday. That's going to be episode 6, I think. And boy, it was really good. And we've been publishing little snippets in our group, Windows Phone WTF group on LinkedIn, if people want to join that.
I was wondering what that was when I saw that this morning. I was like, okay, I need to figure out what this is and what's going on here.
Yeah, so we've been interviewing, Peter Canuck, Todd Warren, Laura Butler, Joe Belfiore. We've got a few other special guests coming, but it's going to be a 9-part series on the arc of Microsoft's mobile platform over about a 20-year period, which is cool. And we talked to Joe on Friday. He was very generous with his time and really got to some core issues, core questions about tough decisions that were made. And
that's cool. And people out in the world may not know of some of those other guys, but they may know about Joe because he was certainly out front holding that Windows Phone and launching it.
Right.
And he had the hair, Yeah,
it still has the same haircut.
He still has the same cool hair, and you got to wear the black turtleneck kind of stuff. Be a good product guy.
The turtleneck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and he sounded good, and the picture was good, and
absolutely. So
that was fun. So that's going to come out. We're going to try to get the first episodes out in April, by the end of April, episode 1.
And Pete's really holding back and being shy about what we really are. We are really documentarians. Is that a word? We've created a documentary.
It's a documentary, yes.
A 9-episode documentary, like you may have seen on Netflix, perhaps, or something. I don't know.
That's cool.
We're ready to go on Netflix. Rob's ready for his Netflix deal.
There you go.
We do one down the road on OS2 and Windows, and you can crush me, Rob, on Windows. Because I fought that fight as a young person, and I was so passionately on the OS.
I'm right there with you, man. I was Mr. OS2. I felt like I had no friends in the world.
Yep.
I'm going to Egghead Software. Where's the OS2 section?
Yes, OS2. And the battle was over before it began. Let's be honest.
But I do remember there was a moment in time, I was joking there, when Egghead actually did have a small section, and you could buy, I think there was Lotus 1, 2, 3 for OS2. There was AMI Pro. Does anybody remember AMI Pro versus Wordperfect?
No.
There was Wordperfect for OS2.
Sure.
I met a guy that worked for Wordperfect the other week in San Francisco.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Capitalist now.
Relic.
Smith Point Capital. Yeah, really super nice guy.
Arguably the best client for CompuServe was this product for OS2 called Golden Compass. And so can you imagine the early 90s, and all of a sudden here's this 32-bit multi-threaded client for CompuServe that used multiple threads to go to different parts of CompuServe in a way that nothing else could. It was pretty cool. And so a lot of that was showing off the power of OS2. Yeah. But why did they lose? Let's give it the big M, marketing.
Marketing and third-party, and embracing third-party developers. Like, that was the thing. I was doing all those demos in Chicago back in the day, right? Client server, object-oriented donut guy, and showing off the multitasking of OS2, and this is great, but all that ran on it was IBM software.
Right.
And I was like, you've got to open this up, just like Sega lost to Nintendo back in the day because Nintendo opened up. It's the same story.
Yes.
Well, this is a theme we had with Joe B on Windows Phone, right? Was how do you, once you had iPhone and Android, who wants to write their app a third time, for a third platform? And it was like such a huge, it was a big ask. And that was really what ultimately, kind of killed the platform.
I think it was Magnavox when they came out with their first VCR. They would only sell it to you if you bought their TV. So if you had any other so it's like did not work out for them.
But by the way, let's bring that back to IoT and Edge. That's got to happen too, right? Because these Edge folks that are closed, they're going to have to open up, right? Or they're going to lose. I have strong opinions here, but like if you get a proprietary Edge that only works with your stuff, good luck in the next few years.
True.
I think from time to time we should remind the young people that enjoy technology and things like over-the-air updates. And you take it for granted. That you can just, oh, look, it's a patch. Click. Ooh, I have the latest and greatest. Because back in the day, you had to get on that dial-up phone, and you had to ask for one of the borrow code.
Or worse, the set of diskettes, like OS2 had 28. I remember, and I go on and on, reinstalling.
Eric, do you remember the concept, the phenomenon, when you're having to reinstall OS2, getting disk elbow?
Oh, yeah. You had to stack them and getting them in the right sequence. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
So this is the archaeology episode. We're
historians here and archaeologists. When you talk about open stuff, because I know I still have a stack of OS2 magazine, and I also remember the one where you had Patrick Stewart, the Borg is here and everything, so OS2 could run Windows and DOS and everything. But I also remember one of the editors, I think his last name was Black, he was bashing IBM because they were also charging a lot of money for the SDK and tools to build apps for OS2. And I just remember a commentary. It's like, you should be handing that out to every developer you can find.
Microsoft did.
Yep. Yeah.
I was screaming at folks in Boca Raton, but no one's listening to a 24-year-old screaming.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes companies get short-sighted with the business model. They don't really clearly define what winning looks like, and they get wrapped up in their own kind of P&L and processes. And one of the cool things about doing this Windows Phone or Microsoft platform thing is having these discussions with folks from things that happened 20 or 30 years ago, like we're talking about. Same stuff happens today. People they struggle with how to be open, how to make things work, how to get ecosystem engaged, how to figure out the right pricing model for your stuff. And so some of these lessons are just evergreens, for people that are building products and building businesses.
That's so true.
So I don't want to ruin your punch, but isn't a lot of the success of Windows Phone actually in Android now?
Yes.
I don't know if that's
what it's
about.
If you think about, Android adopted the Windows Mobile way of doing approach, kind of open, let you do whatever the hell you wanted to. And also their operating system was free, so there was no licensing cost to be paid by the OEM. A lot of people have pointed out to us, rightly so, in that Windows Mobile timeframe, we were building devices for the mobile operators, and we gave this great toolkit, this thing called Windows CE that was broken into about 256 different pieces, and you could assemble whatever you wanted, which was great. And which is why you had a lot of variety and stuff like that. And then so Joe
variety.
Yeah, and then Joe Belfiore talks about closing that down and trying to be more iPhone-like.
The chassis, which was very restrictive.
Isn't that a crazy story of getting the end user in a way wrong, because the telco was the end buyer, right? Yes. Therefore, the telco was telling the OEM, this is what the customers want. And since when does a telco know what the customer wants? I mean, what a SHIT show.
Right. But that was the way the phone business worked for decades, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it worked. And then that whole disruption had happened in the early 2000s, I think required everyone to sort of reboot. And
there was a span of time. If you think of a great company like HTC, which was kind of our partner in crime for a long time, but for the longest time, they lived in the shadows. They were an ODM, and they basically, you bought a phone that said, this is the AT&T blah, 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 2475. All these were HTC devices, but they were branded by the mobile operator. And there was so much control by the operator. Yeah. Yeah, and it was their phone and their experience and all that kind of stuff.
Well, because back in the early days, I mean, the things that connected to that network needed to be very tightly controlled because the systems were pretty brittle back then, and you couldn't just connect anything you wanted to that network. And so, for a technical necessity, there was a lot of requirements around what got connected. That extended into cell phones, and then ultimately became kind of irrelevant. But, that's why there was that sort of thing. Remember back in the day when you had a landline, you got your phone from Bell Telephone, right? And that was, you didn't go and buy any telephone you wanted. I mean, that would make no sense, right? So it's funny how things kind of kept going, extended until someone decided to disrupt the whole thing, which is what we could talk about with cars, or what we could talk about with any of these industries where they just get disrupted from a business model perspective or from a technology perspective.
What's also nuts is that, if you're developing an application with the network in mind as a developer, you have to adapt to this like one network, which means your addressable market is now much smaller, because what happens when that network switches to a roaming network, a Wi-Fi network, a local LAN network, a private something network? Now your app scheme is out of the window. That's really tough to do. So developers kind of said, screw the network, folks. Who cares? Yeah. I'm going to do it this way. And 20 years later, I mean, the way, I'm not an Apple fanboy. I couldn't even put it against an Android, but I'm just going to get Apple because all my stuff works. Yeah. And as an ex-carrier guy, I'm one of them. Like, I stopped thinking about the network as much, and that does break my heart, just so you know. But that's not how it is. I sold it as, hey, if you buy my carrier, you get your calls will connect in more places than the other guy, and that was a fact. Sure. Now the buyer is at this, this and what I use for it. And a service is just a service. It's crazy how much it's changed in 15, 20 years.
David, didn't your company tell Steve Jobs to go to hell?
Old company.
In more colorful language.
And then so he had to go to this decrepit company that's struggling to make it, AT&T, and they went for it because Verizon was too powerful at the time. And Verizon said, we're so much bigger than AT&T. We're the best network. And so they're like,
take it or leave it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and if there wasn't an exclusivity with AT&T, there probably never would be an Android platform, because Android was enabled because Verizon had to compete against Apple, and they had nothing to work with except Android. So they had to go all in on Android and really turn that into a legit platform. So, in some multiverse somewhere currently happening.
But
there is no Android.
In between the Android jump, we had BlackBerry couldn't deliver a touchscreen.
That's true.
I mean, so that was in between. And talk about another company that is like, we know best. You don't need a touchscreen. Okay, we'll give you the touchscreen. It's not going to work properly. You're holding it wrong.
You're holding it wrong.
Have you seen that BlackBerry movie? It's fantastic.
Yes, yeah. I loved it. Yeah. I loved it. I loved that movie. That was really good. It was great to see those guys in a garage doing the real thing.
I've got 7 of them in my drawer still because I don't.
I love it.
How's that? Is that a little better?
And Pete, with the Android thing coming in, that's also when we started getting. We call it bloatware now.
Yes. Yes. Bloatware,
crapware, bloatware, whatever.
Yeah. That was also like the beginning of it, you get these free things, and I'm like, well, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Like and we faced that in the PC world. I remember buying like a Sony Vaio laptop years ago.
Packard Bell, you get a Packard Bell machine with like 93 icons on the desktop.
Yes.
That's crap.
200 meg printing program. What does this printing program do?
What's it going to do for me?
Well, it's still, remember McAfee virus and all that antivirus stuff.
Oh, God.
They should have called it McAfee virus, not McAfee.
I just felt Bill Hewitt shaking his grave and go like, take the icons.
But, that's what happens when the margins go to zero, and PC makers have to monetize somehow, and they tried, so.
So to show you,
I think that was I think for because this is the archaeology
yes,
Episode.
archaeology episode.
Yeah.
I think it was super cool how the PCs got democratized, because outside of IBM, I think it was HP, right? One of the early builders.
Compact.
Compact.
Yeah.
Compact.
Dell.
But then they realized it's like, hold on, we're not OEMing this stuff. We're just putting it together. So does that mean that anyone else can just go get the parts and put it together?
Yeah.
And look at all of the stuff. I think that was really, really, really good. I mean, Sun Systems eventually came out of that, paradigm too, and that worked out. So I don't know. I wish there was more of a, parts are available.
That was a good example of taking a closed architecture and turning it into a full-fledged open ecosystem where, quote unquote, anyone could build and ship a PC. I actually worked at a company called Bitbucket Computers out of college, and we built our own PC, our own branded PCs in West Newton, Massachusetts, based on parts. And we sold it into the corporate environment there. We sold to Raytheon and a bunch of other folks. And we were selling, 1,000 unit orders, 2,000 unit orders, and we sold them to the public. It was our own branded PCs. We bought our cases somewhere, and we bought our power supplies, and anyone could build a PC.
I miss those days.
Us.
Yeah,
those are the days,
in the early 80s, the Z80, you could build your own computer, right? I think
Radio Shack kind of helped a lot of that with their Tandy stuff.
Yeah, they went in with the TRS-80 Model 1s, Model 3s.
Yes.
How far
back were you? IBM PC.
My name was Wang. I worked on a Wang terminal. My first computer I touched was I played Space War on a Wang mainframe somewhere.
Wow, I love that. We are going way back in history, folks. This just to remind, if you're just joining us, this is the archaeology episode.
That's right.
And this is where Eric is going to talk to you about when IBM tried to get the horses back in the barn again. And
I'm actually 146. I just take good care of myself.
And so you might remember, children, when there was the ISA standard, and then IBM was losing control to the clones, and so they created this thing called microchannel, and they launched they launched the PS2 computer, the PS2 mouse, and the OS2 operating system back in the 80s to try to reclose the ecosystem that they had lost. And what was interesting is they thought they could pull it off, but
once the ecosystem opens up.
So Rod Kenyon at Compaq had so much power by then, and he was buddies with our old boss, Bill Gates. And then he and Gates and Andy Grove were having private meetings every month. And so when Intel decided to not give IBM an exclusive or first right of refusal to the 386 chip, that's when things started to unravel for IBM. And it's like, how did Compaq get a 386 before we did? This is crazy talk. And then they're getting love. Yeah, it was really interesting. And so, I remember Microchannel was going to change the game. And then Rod Kenyon got HP and all the other clone players together and created something called EISA, which was 100% compatible while being faster. The other funny thing is, while the folks at Compaq were worried about Microchannel, it turns out IBM's own software was not working on IBM's hardware running Microchannel, which was kind of humorous. It's like, how did that happen? There's
actually a good movie on Netflix as well on this subject called, I think, Silicon Cowboy, something like that.
Yes, you should watch
the whole story
Silicon
of
Cowboys.
It's a really good one, same as the one that Eric mentioned on BlackBerry. It's great.
Yeah, definitely watch Silicon Cowboys. I've seen it on Apple TV. And so, because you got three guys from Texas Instruments, not unlike, Jobs and Wozniak. Remember Wozniak getting permission from HP to build the Apple I? Remember, I get to sign off my bosses.
Well, remember your old boss, Mr. Gates, getting a kernel from IBM, right?
Maybe. Because I was friends with four of the guys on the OS2 team in Boca Raton. They ended up being on the .NET Compact Framework team, strangely enough, years later. And so you had Microsoft and IBM guys there together building this thing. OS2 is a great system, just crashed.
As you're going down memory lane, like I think all 70% of the big names we've said today are somehow tied to Stanford. Stanford got a big IBM machine, in the mid '60s, and that opened up a lot of tinkering. Bill Hewitt was in the neighborhood, Packard was in the neighborhood, and this is before the young people, the Gates and the Jobs. This is all like straight up coming out of Stanford.
Yeah.
Right.
That whole mainframe history is, in fact, I have a book on it, and I love all that stuff. And boy, did I not realize when I joined IBM in '88, it was the beginning of the end. I mean, look at where they are now.
So there is another person that people don't talk about. Ross Perot, longtime IBMer, and he talked to Watson and said, I really believe software is going to be more important than hardware in the future. And they're like, you're crazy. And he's like, no, I think this is what we should do. And so Ross Perot leaves and builds EDS. Mm-hmm. And I remember working for a chemical company, and the first time I was like on a terminal, doing my job, and it turns out it was on a long distance lease line to an EDS mainframe, like in Dallas or Plano, and I'm in Houston, and it was Ross Perot's stuff, and he just put that into action, and he became a billionaire because he saw something that Watson didn't see.
Yeah,
well, it was interesting. Back then, we had the mainframe business was the computing business. It shifted into desktop distributed PCs, and now it's shifted back to Blackwells, running in air conditioned rooms, which is kind of what mainframes used to be.
And so, how did IBM not capture this cloud market? Right, sacred cows. Right, you're not going to go mess that revenue stream up. Like I'm making too much money on CICS and DB2. And the mainframe should be the cloud.
Yes.
Oh, well, that ship has sailed, folks. That ship should be.
How did
they were already on services at that time when the cloud started to emerge? So they were already out of the software loop.
Well, Gerstner came in and gave I thought he did a fantastic job breathing new life into things like WebSphere. And they bought Rational before that, but Rational. I learned quickly that runtimes make money and tools do not. Right.
I think you might be onto something there. Gerstner turned the company around. A lot of people don't realize IBM in the early 90s had the largest collapse and layoff in the history of America.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Was it 250 employees? 250,000.
I had never done a layoff before, and then '93, I believe it was.
Yeah,
and I watched person to my left gone, person to my right, and somehow I survived that. But then Gerstner breathed new life into it. And then Gerstner, I had a guy on my board who worked for Lou. He ran to a wonderful man named Jan Lindelof, a Swedish gentleman. And he took me aside. He said, look, I timed my retirement the same day of Lou's because we knew that the old guard was coming back in and going to turn this into a services and marketing organization. Sorry, IBM. I loved my career there, but...
So interestingly, IBM, though, is still a very big powerhouse in the FinOps, for high-performance financial transactions.
Sure.
They're still building their own silicon.
Banking.
And they're doing a lot of great stuff in AI acceleration as well. So I expect they're going to keep innovating. They have this locked-in, big part of the economy that's still running IBM on-prem.
But Pete, is it real AI or is it a mechanical Turk? Please, spill the beans.
It's all these people in Boca Raton, typing very quickly.
We all know what Watson
was. Can you define real AI first?
What is real?
Well, Rob, they're still using the Watson branding. It went from Watson IoT marketing, banner to now AI.
You can't tell a Watson apart from a Watson. It's all branding. It drove me nuts.
Yeah, that's a whole other
good point.
Cautionary tale. IBM really took the lead on AI very early, and
they did
kind of seeded that.
I had friends that worked on Watson MD Anderson that came from Proficient, my old company, and they would tell me kind of the truth underneath it, and the truth was not
very good, was it? And they had, I remember IBM had an early IoT thing called Bluemix.
Oh yeah, well that was
Bluemix.
So Predix and Bluemix were the jokes that Aaron and I used when we started building our stuff, because I said I'd call it Bluedix and Premix because it didn't matter. They both didn't work, and I'm like, this is the wrong way to do it, folks. And then that's kind of what inspired us, to be honest. So thank you, IBM. Thank you, GE.
Now let's throw some Node-RED at our customers.
Vaporware.
Node-RED. Yeah, everyone differentiated Node-RED on top of something else. There's
exactly. Yeah.
For all of our loyal watchers, which are up to, let me check, 3 billion today. When you heard Blue Mix, if you saw Mr. Bill Pugh there on the bottom left, like Twitch, he did that because IBM was pitching this magical energy consumption portfolio for the utilities, and my man knows what's up. Yeah. So that's why he laughed.
Hilarious. It is laughable. I mean, call it what it is. A rebranding on top of a rebranding on top of a rebranding.
Right. Mm-hmm. Blue Mix IBM Garage, right?
That's it.
Yep.
Don't call it a comeback.
Yeah.
Was it ever in?
No. We used to be told all the time, you can't compete with Predix or Blue Mix. And I said, boy, if that's the competition technology-wise, no way am I worried.
Well, you can't compete with something that does exist. Oops, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so true.
Well, no, I mean, Predix existed.
Yes,
they had 7,984 engineers working on it.
They did have a Postgres database.
They did have a P&L, and it was primarily L.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 7,000 plus developers. Yeah.
But after I forgot on whose podcast, but one thing that, and it made sense then, there were a few. I'm gonna say real with air quotes, so just bear with me here. Right. But there were a few customer stories where the customer agreed to use their name, where it was incredibly positive to the Predix story, like they saw benefits, And I remember years later finding out that all of these success stories, which again were real, had a ton of engineering support on the background, which is like.
Yeah, but
so,
I mean,
was the tool great? Was it Predix, or was it the people support? It's kind of like, hey, how many project managers did you had? It's so.
Right.
Welcome to the last decade of IoT, folks. Right. That's what it's been. Services.
Yeah. Well, I can give you more colors. I was there at that time. I mean, I think the failure story has several dimensions to me. The first one is, to your point, is David, is that initially Predix was positioned as a toolbox for GE. That's how they did it. And then there was a kind of a decision, I think, made by him to say, well, we can make a market of that, we can make a platform. But then what really happened is that there was a lack of discipline at GE itself. And the different businesses said, screw that, I'm not going to use this platform. If the different GE businesses had gone on the platform, started as a toolbox and use it and stick to that discipline, the story would have been very, very different because there would have been a use case. But there was big battle because aviation said, no, this is crap, I'm doing my own. And Power was saying, yeah, I might do it, but you have to change it for me. And then there was a smart city guys for which no business model said, oh, we'll use it. So he ended up being a fiasco from this standpoint because GE had the opportunity to leverage its businesses to build a practical platform, but actually try to go it outside.
And we've repeated that same process with the clouds for the last decade, right? We're all going to build our platform on the same Lego bricks, and we're all going to call it a product when it's really framework for serviceware, right? That is what has to change at this point.
But is it even a framework for service layer? I mean, to me, everything that I've seen in that space, what turns out to be a UI or any of these other tools are typically engineering tools that somebody said, well, we'll use that and we'll just go to market with it.
You got it. That's exactly what it's been.
Yeah, but the other problem, I think we talked about that, Eric, on this show, is that the problem of industrial use cases is that they are fundamentally system integration projects. Yeah. So the incentive to standardize, as you said, and open to the others is very low. Because I'm not intellectual property.
Yeah.
So there's to me, that's been the big problem of this industry. So you have to look at industries where there is a real change. What I mean, there's a totally new use case and the car industry can be it. But all the other industries where it's optimization, oil and gas, kind of stuff, it's all about optimizing. So I'm optimizing, and what incentive do I have to open my optimization so I can make the room for our competitors? And I think that's the real problem. It's system integration, and those engineers like thing to be closed because it protects the intellectual property.
Yep, it's that, but we're also building at such a low level. We've got to raise it up.
Yeah, bit,
and then
we talked about that. The abstraction level is...
You have to have the experts verticalize these things, right? Oil and gas, transportation, talk about a space that's ripe for disruption. Let's talk about building management systems for a second.
Ooh, don't talk about BMS.
Well, it's scary. So again, we're having some success there, and I'm surprised. Like, how do you win against these monsters, Honeywell and Schneider Electric and others? Well, because these systems are too closed. You have to have open API, and at least then work with people who understand their buildings, understand their infrastructure, and give them enough freedom to morph that thing into what they want, as opposed to the structure.
But they've got kind of a function of a chokehold on that space right now. I mean,
I'm seeing the chokehold loosen. I can't talk about exact specifics, but I've got a couple victories against the chokeholders.
Well, that's good. That's good. We need more of that. But, I want to go back to the standard. Dimitri, you mentioned the standards and everything like that. The weakness, all right, so I'm pro standard 100%. Yes, yes, yes. At the end of the day, it's how did you implement that standard?
Yeah, so let me rephrase what I was saying by that. I think I was more along the line of what Eric was saying, is that I think the keys, and I said that on the show earlier, is abstraction. The problem is abstraction can only come from the business user or the user, the business level. Because to quote your example, Eric, of what IBM did with Rational, Rational was a way to model your software. And I was in the data modeling industry as well. Yeah. It actually failed with engineers because they're not interesting. They want to go down the level. The best use case for the Rational was, I have a code, I want to scan the code and generate the model. Was not doing the model and generate the code. It was always the other way around. So the engineer level, even if you, and to your point, I think, Bill, at the engineer level, if you force them into standards, you don't achieve anything because they don't really care and they see it as a threat. But if you abstract so that the end user or the consumer level can then start, Zapier and Airtable, okay? Zapier and Airtable are successful because the guys that say, hey, I have those two processes, I want to connect them, and I want to do a little bit database so I can manipulate the data, and I create value. And the engineer is going to tell you, oh, no, it's not this, it's not that, it's not SQL, it's not blah, 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 blah. So this element.
I don't disagree with you, but how many people in the space truly understand abstraction?
I agree. I agree, but
we're asking them to do something that they're not accustomed to doing.
Well, it's
secondarily, I think. Working with so many different companies and watching these things and listening to what they're doing, I'm hearing the engineers, based on user stories and requirements, ask, "What's the business case for this?" I'm sorry, Mr. Engineer, get over there and sit to the side. Let the product manager actually write a set of user stories, use cases, and standards that need to be aligned to, and you just deliver to that. I'm not going to tell you how to design. Don't talk to me about the business case.
I guess to Dimitri's point, though, aren't standards, like as these different verticals mature in their deployments, the standards are driven more by the commercial customers that are requiring faster deployment, better ROI, more, but less lock-in, right? So it's in the oil and gas industry. Chevron is really driving this, the requirement for standards, and people like that are the buyers, right? It's not the implementers of the tech. It's the customers that have to pay and don't want to get locked into the Honeywells or whoever, right?
Yeah.
I think the challenge, the real implementation is still expensive. As long as we keep on having to pay $300K per year developers to deliver the code, they're going to have the power. So maybe AI will be able to help them. If AI can actually
Copilot, I think it's called.
Well, no, not the same.
AI with the software, the AI writing code.
There you go. I want to say two things about building management, since you guys brought it up, and I'm tangentially in that world as well. I did get to play around with Niagara, which is probably one of the most full-featured building management systems I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe all the stuff I was seeing on the screen. I guess they got acquired by Siemens. And that's an interesting world. When you go into these Class A skyscrapers, they usually have all the good stuff already. Now, are they doing it right or whatever? And this goes back to when I talk about IoT companies, startups. Don't go to Exxon and Shell and thinking that you're going to sell your thing. Go to tier 2 oil and gas, go to class B buildings, go to tier 2 manufacturers, because the guys with the big bucks already have the best tech.
You got to work with the Schlumbergers and the Baker Hugheses.
Yes, right? You absolutely have to work with Schlumberger.
They're the experts.
Well, and when it comes to the building management stuff too, is they have relationships like with the elevator, with the HVAC crew, which the parking garages, with the surveillance and security. So it's really piecemeal, but the property managers will work with, all of those vendors.
This building management company here, they're from the UK. I just read an article about them, Infogrid. Just saw it on Newsfeed yesterday. They raised $90 million last year in equity, going after the same market that I think a few of us are talking about here. Smart buildings. What? I'm going to read what are they doing different? Do they have can their dashboard go into dark mode? I don't know.
Yeah,
they're democratizing it back.
I'll tell you, this whole movement with intelligent infrastructure is real, but boy, is it messy. And we're luckily a part of some big consortium groups that are going into foreign countries right now as part of the infrastructure. And if that has success, I think there could be some game-changing moments here, right? Where you just provide the glue for people that are doing waste management and 3D printed housing and agriculture. It's fascinating what's going on there.
Well, and in the building management space, the property owners are kind of, a lot has changed because of COVID. And their number one priority is, how do we get people back in the office? How do we recover from the lost lease space arrangements and contracts that we lost? And so there's a lot of really creative. So as technologists out there, as vendors in this space, you have to take it back to that level as opposed to, I'm going to make this building smart. Well, they're not thinking about that. They're looking at, we have 90%, we went from 90% capacity to now 20%. What are we going to do?
Chicago's got 8 million square feet of available space, right? But looking, and it's by far the highest in the history of the city, right?
So they're like, how do I
not investing. Yeah.
How do I make this building put this building in a position where it's competitive, where people are going to want to lease from me and not next door?
And they're doing that with common areas that have great TVs, all this nice stuff. They're not going to do it with the smart building stuff. I'm with you.
I was at the Microsoft campus, by the way, last week, the new Microsoft campus they built out. There's plenty of parking there, just in case anyone's interested.
I'll tell you what I am seeing, though, in the building space. I can't name names, but it's all about energy efficiency. They're wanting to basically, they want to make their commitments on carbon footprint, and they want to be able to measure those savings. And it's been tricky because they got to stream data from all types of equipment, and they don't just want to stay within the building. They want the software to be able to say, hey, you know what? I want to actually have my fleet involved in this as well, but I want the same software. And that's the flexibility thing that we're seeing some success with. It's like, okay, these other things are building only, and they're not going to get into my fleet business. But what if I had software that could monitor a truck as well as it could monitor a Radix gateway that's the building?
But are they working with the utility? Because that's the key right there.
Because my dad's in commercial air conditioning, and what they've been seeing for the last 4 or 5 years, and this was happening during COVID, was the HVAC companies are working with the energy companies, and there's some collaboration going on because it's right now all about sustainability and trying to really be more economical inside the building with air, with lighting, energy usage.
They're trading that energy on the back end. That's part of the changing business models. It's happening. And you nailed it, Stephanie. I'm seeing it in the HVAC space all over the place.
And there's they essentially have launched consulting type services within these HVAC companies, within the energy companies, to go into large buildings, small buildings, and even all the way down to the home level and do an assessment, essentially. They just need someone to tell them what can we change and what can we
And this
adopt.
is the cool IoT, because what they need to do is get to these variable speed motors, things that they can control remotely. It's fascinating because they're like, we've already squeezed so much, with the efficiency of the device, but we need to get more by now utilizing IoT. So they're
crank the temp up to 75,
But that's what they've always wanted, right? I mean, they've had these programs in place for the longest, right? Where they want to do demand side management. from the utility side as a service, and it's an opt-in. Now I see it on the commercial side as something that's beneficial. From the consumer side, they say, hey, we want to control your pool pump. Oh, by the way, you live in Texas? Damn, it's 98 degrees. Let me turn your thermostat to 80, and you just sit there and stew a little bit. And then, we'll kind of give you a little bit of relief right around 9 p.m. when it's still 98 degrees. I mean, I see it on the commercial side as being useful. I don't see it on the consumer side because people will opt in and then they override. They're like, no, forget that, damn. It's too hot up in here, and I'm sitting here sweating just thinking.
But if you can apply some smart AI and do that in the right time period, right, and, based on location, based on weather, based on all sorts of things. I think that's the innovation you'll see, but I'm with you, Bill. I think it's going to be
I think there's going to end up being two grids. There's a grid for power grid for consumers where they're going to get the short end of the stick and they're going to be sweating. And then there's going to be the commercial grid where we're going to run AI data centers and it's going to be fantastic.
Sounds like
I agree with
5G networks.
I think the consumer grid is going to be community energy storage where they're going to be
true. It's going to be self-powered, more self-powered stuff. Yeah, it's going to have to.
And there's the Texas grid.
The what?
ERCOT. ERCOT.
Hey, all the co-ops in Texas too.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, there's no Texas grid. There's ERCOT and
that's it.
Often when it's
figure out a way to harvest Gulf-size hail and turn that into energy.
As opposed to just insurance.
No, they did. You saw the potential
too soon, David. Too soon.
Spins a turbine.
Way
or something.
too soon. Stephanie's got PTSD over there.
There is a Texas. There is a Texas.
Exactly.
There is a Texas grid. From what I learned recently, there's only three grids in the US. There is West, East, and Texas. I didn't know that.
I mean, if you're looking at it as a map, there's a grid of the state
versus Texas.
But it's separate.
It's separate from the rest of the country.
No. Texas is its own country.
It's its own.
We already seceded, Bill.
Hold on now.
We say the same in California. So.
Yeah.
Oh no, California is the interesting part is having lived in California and now living in Texas. I'm like, well, I didn't defect from anywhere.
No, be careful though. You got to get those California plates off your car.
Yeah,
the same thing.
I did that before we ever even landed.
You were smarter than I was. I had a sports car in the middle of a bunch of trucks and California plates, and I realized, why do I keep getting run off the road? I got to get plates off my car.
That's why.
That's why. Yep.
No California is a cuss word in Texas.
Yeah, it is. And then I have to tell people, I'm actually from Chicago. I just took a pit stop in San Francisco for a while.
Right. It's the cuss word in the Midwest, too. Yeah. Right. So here's some ancient computer history trivia here to pull it back to ancient times. So when Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, who was the person who came to his aid and said, I believe in you and I'm backing you, whatever you do, before Steve Jobs had thought of anything? Oh. And I've mentioned his name previously in this call. Nope.
No, it was whatever he helped with Next, right?
That's right. But prior to Next, nope.
Prior to Next,
well, but yeah, Next was as barely a twinkle. It was like, I believe in you. You know how VCs often say, we're betting on the team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ross?
It's Ross Perot.
Ross Perot. Oh, wow.
Ross Perot. There's a great photo. When Ross Perot passed away, I remember posting a photo of Ross Perot with his arm around Steve Jobs. He called Steve Jobs like right away. He's like, I believe in you, and I'm going to back you, whatever you want to do. And so Ross Perot is the backer of Next.
Rob, you're in Dallas. Did you go to the Perot Museum while you're there?
I have not, no, but I'm in Plano right now, not far from the God Pod, so I get it. No, it's cool. I love the history stuff. It's good to watch things like Silicon Cowboys, Triumph of the Nerds, or read Accidental Empires to find out how we got to where we are.
Revenge of the Nerds. Remember that one? That was a really good one.
Exploding the Stone is a good book as well.
Yeah. Some people went left instead of right. They made this decision instead of that, and it changed the whole history of what we're doing.
Windows Phone WTF, add that.
Windows Phone WTF. Eric, I am sure that there were a bunch of sales guys at IBM in the early days selling OS2 that were probably just selling to insurance companies and banks, and they probably said, business is great.
Yes, that's what I did. State Farm, Allstate, first licenses. I mean,
and so they're like, we're going to kill Windows. This is awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, State Farm was a big OS2 user, huge. First ones to buy Visual Age.
Yeah, there you go, Visual Age, which just to rehash, all of Clearblade is written in Visual Age.
I have articles. You can look them up back in the 90s. Draw your arrows, baby.
Yeah. Back when I was in high school.
Do you have to do a disclaimer when you're selling your product there, Eric? That's like, I do. It runs only on OS2?
No, my disclaimer is I have not touched a single line of code. I handed that to Aaron Ellsbrook and team, and I just helped with vision. I stayed out of the coding.
Visual Age.
I also had these questions, actually. I also had these questions, like, did you code these? No.
No. Aaron's smart enough to say, we'll keep you out of this now. I'm like, okay.
That's awesome. Wow, the edge. So you talked early at the call about opening up the edge, letting other people do stuff on. What does that mean?
Edge AI.
Well,
I'm curious what it means from your perspective.
It means you've got to have software that just sits above the operating system layer that is open API, and that basically is identical to what runs in the cloud. And then you accept all hardware that runs, in our case, Linux, right? You want to move down even further to TinyML and RTOS, and there's something but you also have to play nice with others. That means when you're open, that means your stuff can run next to someone else's stuff that they have, and you make that interoperable. You don't try to own the edge. And the hardware companies, some of them are pretty closed. I don't want to name names to get in trouble, but I see it in Rail all the time, right? And it's really, instead of an open edge, it's what I consider purpose-built software to do one thing. Well, what if it's open software to do more than monitor just a crossing, but a switch, a locomotive, a heater, and then apply that across industry? I think the winners in that space are going to be people that play nice with others, so you're open enough to interoperate.
The edge is a team sport,
I think to that end, I think you're going to see that. You're going to see that in the city municipal space as a requirement. Because I mean, for me, it's usually, rather than me approach a company and say, hey, let's partner together and let me build a digital twin, I want to run a web agent in your device.
Right. I want to run that digital twin on the edge, right?
Yes.
And it's more than container management. This is what it's not just container management. That's a piece of it, right? But we can't be custom building so much. It'll never get there.
It'll never get there.
So
you just want to say, give me a little bit of space. Let me drop this on there, and I'm going to respect my area. Give me 40 megabytes on Linux, and you can use the rest of it, and we can put the whole thing on there.
Because that's the only thing I'm doing is I'm building this distributed edge cloud thing, but I'm just building the infrastructure. I'm using Ubuntu and OpenStack and microcloud.
Now, the thing though that does get to me, and this will come back to something that I think we talked about a long time ago, and that is you're going to see the emergence of SBOMs at that point.
SBOMs.
Software bill of material.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely, yes. I mean, I've got customers already building this into their schema, which is, hey, Clearblade, get your price to where I need it, basically. So I can tell you it. Which, at volume, you're like, sure, right?
Yeah, right.
To be honest, Edge is kind of like sleeves out of my vest, right? I'm not running the cloud. I'm not paying for the CPU. If I have all this functionality and you write a contract that says you're going to do X million devices, here you go. I'll make it fit your bomb.
Absolutely. So, Stephanie, I think we've reached the end.
I was thinking when you first said that, I wasn't paying attention, Rob. What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying, Stephanie, I would love for you to take us out. We've reached the end of the show.
Yes, we have. So let's just take, what did we talk about today? We talked about artifacts and relics and history and art. We really dug deep.
Everything old is new again.
Exactly. Everything comes full circle in IoT Coffee Talk. So check out all of our episodes at iotcoffeetalk.com. Follow us, like us, share us. We're all over the, what do you call it, Leonard? Rob, the intraweb?
The internet.
I don't know. You guys have some crazy stories. Okay, also,
elevate our kids, right?
Go ahead and get a hoodie, a t-shirt, elevateourkids.org. You'll find some links to do that, and you'll support kids that are we are helping bridge the digital divide. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Have a good week.
Much love, guys.
Bye, folks. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Rob.
Oh, love the balloons.
I love the balloons. I just need 99 left balloons.